Hello, everybody. Yate, Osio, hello, and a warm welcome to the second session of our new speaker series, A Sense of Place, the human connection to earth, water, and sky. Today, we are very honored to host Dr. Tom Belt, a Cherokee knowledge holder, elder, and first language speaker from Cherokee, North Carolina, and Dr. Lisa Lefler, a medical and applied anthropologist and full-time teaching professor at Western Carolina University. The title of their talk is Deep Roots. We came up with that title. A discussion about health, well-being, and the deep connection to community and land through language and the sacredness of all life. This series is hosted by the Indigenous Education Institute, IEI. Today's session is supported and funded by the Indigenous Education Institute. I am Diné and Tsalagi, Navajo and Cherokee. My Diné clans are Bibatoni, the Deer Springs clan, and Tsinjakini, the Cliff Dweller clan, which has relationships with Santa Clara Pueblo. My Cherokee name is Tsawayuga, and I'm from the Cherokee Bird Clan. I'm an affiliate professor in the Department of Environmental Studies and Forestry at the University of Washington. I'm also the founding president and executive director of the Indigenous Education Institute, which has been in existence for 30 years. I'm getting a little feedback here. I guess we are located in the San Juan Islands of Washington State and on the Navajo Nation. IEI, the Indigenous Education Institute, is an Indigenous institution with a mission of preserving, protecting, and applying traditional Indigenous knowledge today. We also honor our many non-Indigenous allies from around the world and work with them in dynamic and collaborative relationships. I would like to begin today with a heartfelt acknowledgement of the Indigenous peoples of our Mother Earth, to honor our many participants from around the world. I also want to acknowledge that I currently reside on the ancestral lands of the saltwater salmon people of the Salish Sea, who have called this place home since time immemorial. I honor the inherent and acquired treaty rights of these Indigenous peoples. The speakers and presentations in this series have been chosen to reflect an awareness of the foundations of traditional Indigenous knowing and living. We also honor and work with practitioners of Western science, bringing the two ways together in a collaborative process of integrity and respect. We use the concept collaboration with integrity, the title of one of our books. In this series, we are focusing on the human connection with our Mother Earth, waters, and sky. A major focus for this speaker series is expanding awareness and understanding of cultural differences and similarities, and to support successful and diverse collaborative working relationships, whether it be at NASA HEAT, Johns Hopkins University, Applied Physics Lab, the National Science Foundation, or in education, health, astronomy, national resource management, museums, science centers, national parks, and tribal communities. I want to personally thank you for attending this webinar. The interest you have shown is heartwarming. We have many people registered from all across the United States. We have participants from all around the world, including Canada, Great Britain, and Spain, to name a few. We have 350 participants that have signed up today. Welcome to all of you. It's also interesting and heartwarming for me that we have many different tribes represented in our registrations for this presentation today. We also welcome many classrooms and professors who have registered for this event. Before we continue, I would like to ask you to put any questions for the presenters into the question and answer box, not into the chat box. This will enable us to serve you towards the end of this presentation. We are honored to have Dr. Polly Walker, the IEI Chairman of the Board, to serve as our question moderator. I would now like to introduce Dr. Tom Belt and Dr. Lisa Lefler, who will speak. Dr. Thomas N. Belt is a Cherokee elder and first language speaker who lives in Cherokee, North Carolina. He is the retired coordinator of Western Carolinas University's program in Cherokee language. Tom is a recognized scholar regarding Cherokee language, health, and culture. He is the recipient of an honorary doctorate degree from Western Carolina University. He is co-founder of the annual Rooted in the Mountains Symposium. He is a consulting scholar for the American Philosophical Society's Center for American Indian Research in Philadelphia and a consultant to the Center for Native Health in North Carolina. Tom received the Community Leadership Individual Award presented by the Cherokee Nation, given to recognize citizens who have tirelessly given, without hesitation, their time to make communities more vibrant, livable places. He has co-authored many articles and book chapters and is presented at many universities across the nation. Tom has most recently co-authored 2 books, Sounds of Tohi, Cherokee Health and Well-Being in Southern Appalachia, with Lisa J. Lefler, 2022, University of Alabama Press. This is a great book. You should read it. He also has co-authored The New Voice of God with Margaret Bender, 2025, University of Oklahoma Press. Dr. Lisa J. Lefler is a proud descendant of the mountain people of Southern Appalachia, who have called these mountains home for hundreds of years. She is a medical and applied anthropologist and full teaching professor at Western Carolinas University's College of Health and Human Services. She is also the founder of the culturally based Native Health programs and is the founder and past executive director of the Center for Native Health, Incorporated, a grassroots nonprofit in the Cherokee community. She is co-founder of the annual Rooted in the Mountains Symposium, which integrates traditional knowledge with health and environmental issues. Her most recent publication, co-authored with Cherokee elder Dr. Tom Belt, is entitled Sounds of Tohi, Cherokee Health and Well-Being in Southern Appalachia with Lisa J. Lefler, 2022. Her current research focuses on the connection between Cherokee matrilineality and community wellness. She has worked with Indigenous communities for more than 30 years. And now it is my honor to present my friends and colleagues, Dr. Tommy Belt and Dr. Lisa Lefler, who have been cherished friends of mine and also of Dr. David B. Gay, our IEI Vice President, for more than 20 years. So I'm now turning it over to Lisa and Tommy.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and we just appreciate all of those kind words and generosity and allowing us to be here and share with you all today. And we appreciate the opportunity to speak, and we'll talk, I guess, in part about Sounds of Tohi, but really about some of the things that we spoke about earlier in the importance of recognizing in Cherokee terms how the world works and being able to understand our connectedness, to everything.
Is, uh, and also from me, thank you, Nancy, for inviting us to be a part of this, and and thank you everyone for tuning in and participating and stuff. And we will try uh, to address as best we can uh, any of the topics that need to be talked about and stuff as we go along.
Yeah, the work that we did together came about as a result of Tom coming over and talking with my mom, who is a Appalachian woman, and they would talk for a long time about him being a Cherokee man whose ancestors were from Western North Carolina, and his coming home from Cherokee as his family had been removed. But his coming back home and recognizing the things that had been taught to him about Gadua, that mother town of the Cherokee, and how important that was. And then my mom, as just a woman who grew up and loved the mountains, understood most of the mountains in terms of how she and their family had adapted here, and their conversations intersected really on the land, and this Cherokee culture and Appalachian settler culture. Fortunately, they had a lot of really important and good things to talk about as their cultures kind of intersected there. And so as a result, really, of those conversations, we had decided that it would be really, really good if some of those conversations were made more public, if others who were Indigenous and who were also Appalachian people, either from Appalachia or who had studied or been here and lived here for a while, could talk and have this dialogue as well about the importance of valuing the land and understanding how we live, with such a tremendous diversity of species here, and how important it is to get to know the surroundings that are here. And so we began to have a series of symposia called Rooted in the Mountains. And this was called Rooted in the Mountains, Valuing Our Common Ground. And the intent, and as Nancy had mentioned earlier, was to integrate traditional knowledge with health and environmental issues. And so this will be our 15th year for the symposium. It's always in the end of September. And we've had symposia on just all types of topics. And we've had people say, well, what has that got to do with, the environment and health and all that? But that's the beauty of going, is that that's this Indigenous way of thinking and understanding, that we realize the interconnectivity of everything that exists, and how important it is to not only recognize that, but understand how that works, so that we become better stewards of the land, and become responsible human beings who really know our place. And of course, it's not in the center of the universe. It's really just, we're part of that system of how things work. And so we this year, our theme for Rooted in the Mountains is matrilineality. And so we feel that it's very important, particularly for these historically matrilineal societies, to go back and think about what has happened to that over the last several hundred years of colonizing, and how women had been traditionally, historically, deeply connected to the health and well-being of their communities. And so we have 2 days of panels talking about that. So Tom is, of course, an integral part of all that. As we've done our work over the years, I'll ask him a question about something and I'll say, what is the Cherokee concept of that? And as a linguist and first language speaker, he's able to say, oh, well, that's this in Cherokee. And then he'll translate that back for me because I'm really crappy with language. It opens up all kinds of new understanding and meaning, just the linguistic translation. And that then, as he says, pulls the string to talk about all of those things that are connected to those concepts. And there's many examples, but one of the ones that is related is when we talk about rooted in the mountains. I just asked him, I said, what does that mean, rooted in Cherokee? And it is.
Yeah, the word that we have for root, that we use for root, the roots of plants is unhastedlam. And the stemming or coming from the word for, or if you conjugate the word, you can conjugate the word in many ways. I won't go into a linguistic lecture, but we of course in the indigenous languages can conjugate a whole lot of words if you understand polysynthetic languages. Anyway, a word that it's intrinsically connected with the word unastedla, root, is the word astedlan. You can hear that unastedla and astedlan. Those words are connected, and the word astedlan means to help. And so it seems that our word for root actually would be almost you could say actually just means helper. And biologists in recent years are now just finding out that that's exactly what roots do. They're not just a structural foundation for the plant itself, grounding. Um, Grounding the stem to be upright and to grow naturally upwards. It's not just the foundational part of the plant. It's the part of the plant that also communicates with other plants uh, uh, like it nearby, such as in a stand of trees, a grove of trees. It seems that they are discovering that all the roots are communicating with each other and actually assist each other with enzymes when they detect a lack of it in one of the trees. They will all generate um, that to the soil and with water that comes and stuff in order to help that plant. So roots are in fact helpers, and so being rooted in the mountains, then it opens up a whole different way. And I'll let Lisa talk a little bit more about that. But language it brings to mind the fact that language is more than just. I mean, it's saying enough when we say language is basically just how we interpret the world. I think it's been defined by linguists as simply as the way in which we interpret the world. But it's a little bit more than that. It also creates a paradigm shift in how we adjudicate and deduce the use of these words to actually mean different kinds of aspects of how that world of that word can show us mentally in more exactness of what the actual in terms what it does in the actual purpose of that plant, and it changes the paradigm then from a Latin name, from a category into an actual animate thing. It changes it from being abstract into being animate, and it makes the world real. So language becomes an important way of looking at that in in how we discuss things. So we can talk about that later. But as Lisa said, in this case, we look at the word for root, which we use in various ways in English also. But we look at that and then we do a paradigm shift, and suddenly it becomes, and it gives more meaning to the purpose of having these conferences.
It's important to those people who come and who listen. They understand that you know, this is knowledge that the Dua people who live in currently in Western North Carolina, but of course their homeland extends far beyond Western North Carolina. But this is one of the most biologically diverse places in the world. And what they know and understand about how all of these species and plants and animals and interact, how the water is perceived also as medicine, just like other things, that there is that deep in interconnectivity that they have known for thousands and thousands of years. We know that the Cherokee, just by archaeological data, have been here for 13,000 years or more. And that's a long time. And that language has adapted through the years to be able to not just categorize things, but to actually preserve the science and understanding of how things work in this world. And we know that if, as Dr. Begay has said, and Dr. Little Bear has said, when the earth is sick, we're sick. And when we are sick, the earth is sick. So there is an inextricable connection between our health and the health of the world, the health of the land, the health of the water and the air. If you talk to an elder like Tom, who's a first language speaker, and take them out into the forests and into the woods and begin to ask them about forest ants, you know, and salamanders and all of these different types of plants and animals, the language that they are interpreting from really has a deep and valuable science attached to it. And Western science is just now trying to catch up with that. You know, as you mentioned, Nancy, I've been working in indigenous populations for close to 40 years now. And it's unfortunately, it took me 30 years to recognize how valuable it is to ask speakers of their language to provide that language as an understanding of the world. And you gain so much more understanding, you gain so much more knowledge and appreciation for what they know, what they understand, what they see, not just on the land, but as you know, astrologically, cosmologically, that all of these things are connected. And just without elaborating too much, we know that women who are at the center of life in this world, their bodies represent these seasons and cycles. They're embodying many of these natural laws. And that's why women were so very, very important in so many aspects. That's why many of the women, of course, were expected to keep the seed. And they were probably some of the first ethnobotanists and geneticists, you know, in the Western Hemisphere. It is important that we go back linguistically and take a look at what simple words that we think of as in English, but when we talk to speakers of that language, it opens up a whole new world of understanding. And we sure can benefit by listening, by participating, and being humble, and listening again to exactly how this is put together and how this world works. And it brings you every day more gratitude. And if you are living a life of gratitude, which most of these indigenous people that I've worked with have over the years, their gratitude, their humor, you know, their understanding about how to adapt, it can prove incredibly helpful to all of us if we would just take the time to try to create a relationship in a good way. Do we have any questions?
And Lisa, just let me clarify, are you ready for the question and answer part of this?
I think so.
Sure.
We're just trying to stay on time.
Okay, I just want to thank you personally, myself, for your words and your emphasis on interconnectedness and how we can come together in a good way across difference. And I'm not going to take up more time. I'll open it up to the audience. Could you please post your questions in the Q&A box, and I will relay them on. So we have a question here from Susan McVicker. She said, could you please say more about how women embody the seasons and cycles? Thank you.
Well, I'm not a medical doctor. I have a shirt, as a matter of fact, that says I'm not that kind of doctor that I wear sometimes. But I think we understand that women, because they are bearers of life and givers of life, their bodies are very much in tune with so many things in the environment. You have to be very careful, for example, you know, when you're pregnant, about your behavior, what you intake, that can affect the fetus. And we also know that there are certain times of the month that can affect you in what you feel like you can do or not do. And again, these are things that probably can be better discussed by a biologist and a medical person. But I think just as a woman, you know that there are things, and I know my mother, she was very, very, very aware of cycles in the world. She in the natural world, she was very in tune with times when animals would be ready to gestate, when you know, there were migrations, you know, of certain animals in the area, and plants, you know, when they were getting ready to bloom. She understood the seasons and how important these seasons and cycles were, because she, you know, she's the one that tended the garden. She's the one that did a lot of the gathering. She's the one that did a lot of work. We know also that we are in large part water. And we know that the water is also susceptible to the shifts in the moon and various other natural kinds of things going on there. It's very, I think, important that we do recognize how much our bodies are affected by environmental changes. And we could probably talk about that for a long, long time, but this is something I think Cherokee folks knew very well and understood.
Um, um, uh, I would add, I would just want to say that it comes from the understanding, I think, that's um, intrinsic to what we would look at as being Cherokee belief, if you break that down and how that works, the mechanism of how that works is they understood our forebears, our grandmothers and grandfathers for thousands of years, understood after watching, observing, documenting, recording, all of these kinds of things and testing, after 13, just, if in fact, if we're going to use the time frame of 13,000 years, just in that 13,000 years, that's a very long time to be doing what is considered um, the standard by which we judge what hard science is: documenting, observing, um, recording it in a process by which substantiates what it is. That understanding, that the very simple understanding that that we understand today, that even on a subatomic level, things work in cycles. Protons, neutrons go around the core of the atom. Things work like that. They work in a cycle, just in a larger sense as galaxies and planets and solar systems work, but they work in time. And the concept of time, then, from our perspective, is a real good concept of would in fact be what we would call life. It's the way in which we gauge life, time. It's what happens. It's the manifestation of ongoingness, second by second by second, which we judge to be, is what in Western European thought we label it as time, but in fact we would look at it as just life. And in fact, our word in Cherokee for time just means ongoing. You know, we use the word ahlilan, which means it's just going on. Um, uh, that's what time is, but that's also the same concept for life. But my point is that when you look at it from that perspective, when it's just the mechanism by how we judge life, then women seem to be a part of that greater. Um, Women then have almost an internal clock that goes by those things, by those cycles. Um, and so their understanding of all things that were exact in how we live the life of plants, when things come into fruition as far as becoming, things that we use for medicine, things that we use for food and nourishment. They, because of their connection with those cycles and understanding of when things grow and how it grows like that in their own mechanism, they were closer kin to it than males were. And so one can assume that, one can say that that's the reason why women, the matrilineal concept of governance that we had east of the Mississippi was inset, because it gauged our lives. that was the clock by which we gauged our lives, by how they interpreted these things, their knowledge and their watch, and their keeping track of the cycles of plants and animals and stuff like that, and how things work. As long as the seasons and migrations, everything that worked like clockwork, and how we adjusted to our lives from the point of knowing what kind of plant was medicine, what kind was nourishment, when to get it, um, how to steward that, how to keep it functioning, all came from them. So our very lives, our livelihood, our sustainability was based on that kind of systematic understanding of how the world works. And women were absolutely key to that. And their opinions on how they felt about those things wasn't just because of how they felt by intuition, but their knowledge of how and when things should work right. And you know what? It seemed to work really well for 13,000 years. Really, really well. We, you just simply have to say we were pretty healthy before Europeans came here. In fact, all things were pretty healthy before Western Europeans came here. Uh, excuse me, I'm just kind of recovering from a bout of bronchitis. But these things existed because of it. These things were that way because we adhered to that kind of rationale and that kind of logic. Basically, what I'm saying is that we adhere to that kind of science. Now, heretofore, what we're dealing with is try to bring that back, because in the past 500 years, what we considered science was regulated to what we call, at best, they said that it was, they've termed it in its own category as cultural belief, as, sacred belief, and they use those terminologies. We're speaking English right now. So sacred, actually, I want to say that sacred is actually would be translated from us into English as science. When you say science, when you say sacred in the English language, it kind of gives it that air that it's a belief, a constructed belief that may not actually be real science. It's just a belief, you know. And I've been telling people that, people we hear, well, Native Americans, Cherokees, whoever, consider water sacred, you know. Well, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Water is everywhere around us. It's underneath us, above us. It's on the surface of the earth. It's inside of us. We are, in large part, about 75% water. Yes, we did think it was sacred. But then, right at this particular moment, someplace out in the outer reaches of the atmosphere, I'm pretty sure they have probes out there looking at asteroids and different kind of interplanetary stuff, planetary things. And what is the first thing that they look for when they send those probes out? They look for signs of water. If there's signs of water, it indicates that there was life or that there is life there. So apparently, yes, we think water's sacred, but apparently NASA thinks water's sacred too. It's the first thing they look for. So it's the same thing, you know. Although ours is a bit, ours comes from an understanding of how to deduce that. It's a result of 13,000 years of observation, and I think it was right on point. The importance and so that's why we didn't. It wasn't that we understood the idea of matrilineality being such a large part of how we looked at stuff wasn't based on some kind of Western European concept of equality, or it's not based on having social equality or anything like that. It's based on science, because that's the way the world works. You know, it means more than just allowing somebody to be equal. And it's not about equality at all. It's about what actually works and and how it works and stuff. To give a real good example of it, everything that you read historically, you'll read that that the women of native tribes were the ones who tended the fields and did the work, almost like they were subservient. But the fact of the matter is, men were not allowed in those gardens. You know, the women of the towns would not allow the men to do that because they didn't know how to do it, and weren't as good at it as women for. They had to provide for their grandchildren and their children and everyone's children and everybody in that town. So it had to be done right. And you know, in a kind of common way, men weren't just men were just not up to the task to be taking care of those kinds of things. So, you know, they could do a lot of things, but they weren't the caretakers of health and nourishment either, you know. And once again, in order to validate that, all you got to look at the condition of our tribes prior to Western European contact. Everyone seemed to be very, very healthy. So that validates the importance of matrilineality, I think.
And I'll quote you in a previous conversation. Says the primary source of wisdom and healing, both of the earth and our people. Our terms for love, our concepts for wellness, health, and the earth all stem from our word for woman, ageia. So that's pretty all encompassing. And when you look at words in Cherokee for leadership, as Tom has talked about before, this was a word that women would have used in teaching their young, and the actual translation, I won't murder, but you can.
The word for leader in our language is di-tini-do-hi. And the stem word sound for that di-tini-do is also the same as the word we use for gan-ni-do, which means to carry something flexible, like to carry a jacket or a shirt. We would say gan-ni-do, he or she is carrying it. Gan-ni-do, then the word di-tini-do means that it would almost mean he carries them, he or she carries them as you would something flexible. But note that we're talking about something flexible, and we consider human beings flexible. So we use that same word for carrying a child. We would say if a person was carrying a child, they would say usti, meaning little, usti ganidon. So the word di-tenido means actually one that carries them as they would a child.
And I think it's also important just to note, I know this is kind of going down a rabbit hole, but I have a hard time not doing that. I have a friend of mine who does a lot of listening to podcasts and such, and she was listening to this fella that was called the godfather of AI, but he has been a large contributor. He's an older guy, been a large contributor to the development of AI technology and other things. And he made a comment, and I'll look all this up. I didn't think about writing it down for this particular reason, but he said when asked about the future of AI and this type of technology, he recommended highly that these young folks who are developing this need to make sure that they listen to the voice of women. And and that struck a chord with me in that his emphasis was about the destructive capabilities of this technological movement. And he said, we need to have that element of feminine to offset what is kind of a masculine driven future in technology. And I of course thought that he was very wise in his thinking and his words. And because we're entering into a time where I think it's important that we listen to these societies who were matrilineally focused, and understand that there was health, there was wellness in those societies, and why. And as our friend Eduardo Duran, who some of you may recognize in his work on soul wounding, he talks about the rape of the feminine spirit in the Western Hemisphere at contact, and he said it was the masculine spirit that came and subjugated the feminine spirit here. And of course I write a little bit about that in Sounds of Tohi, and then in another volume edited by Ulrika Wiedhaus and Jerry, well, things aren't coming to my mind right now, but anyway, in talking about these things, I think that there's a lot we can learn from in talking about these societies and how healthy they were, how well they worked, and for a reason.
Tom and Lisa, thank you for your really rich and complex response to that question. And I'm going to turn us now to a couple of questions that focus on how we build those good relationships across the different cultures that you talked about, of what at IEI we call then going on from those good relationships to build collaborations of integrity. So the first one is from Solon Penchevre, which says, as members of non-Indigenous societies, how can we help our communities and ourselves to come back to a sense of home? Shall we work more with Indigenous elders to bless our lands while we are retrieving some of our inner sense of interconnectivity?
As quickly as I can, the first understanding that we have, I can share is that as we have said, is to embrace the idea that I came to understand since I've been here, and I've been here in Western North Carolina for 34 years now. I came here in '91 from Oklahoma. But the thing that I've learned here is that I am from Oklahoma. That's where I was born. I have a 200-year history there, almost 200-year history there. My grandparents, my families are buried there. We have a history there. So I am from there. But the difference is that I am of these mountains. I may be from Oklahoma recently, but I am of these mountains for 13,000 years, just as any rock or any tree. That intrinsic connection to these mountains and the landscape and everything that here goes back that far. So it makes me a part of it. Even though I personally wasn't here, of course, in my lifetime, until '91, and then 150 some years before that, I was not a part of it. I wasn't here, but I was always of it. What I'm trying to say is that one has to begin to understand their connection to the idea and the word for the topic of this webinar is the of where you are. of where you come from and of what you are made of. We are of this place. We are of this place. We are like these mountains. These mountains are like us. We are together. It's the idea of knowing that and then starting from there and realizing as Lisa said, then the next step then is understand what you value about that. And my value about being of these mountains is that I'm grateful for my people having lived here, for my great grandparents, great great grandparents living here and where they came from, and that long history of being here. I'm grateful for what we know because it is in the language that I grew up with, even though um, I didn't hear it here and it was spoken by people who didn't live here. My parents, it came from here too. So that connection means that the way that I thought, that paradigm that's created by language about who you are is in there. So I've always been a part of these mountains, even though I was never ever here until now. That connection is very important in knowing what your responsibilities are. Because if you are grateful for being a part of something, if you're connected and you're grateful for that, then the next thing that you have is that you have to have some kind of responsibility with that. America touts as this great accomplishment that they have a Bill of Rights as part of the government, as part of democracy, as part of the American experience. And what they don't get is that our people didn't have a Bill of Rights because that simply indicates what we had was a bill of responsibility. We lived by a bill of responsibility here for thousands of years because we would say in these mountains, we all live down slope and we all live downstream. And whatever happens to these mountains will happen to us. So we have to keep and steward and watch and take care of where we live because it is who we are. Without them, we don't exist anymore. We can't breathe. We can't drink water. We can't do any of these things in the end. So it becomes important that we take care of that. We owe what we are to these mountains. And in knowing that, then we have that sense of responsibility. So in order to have that, then we have to realize, in order to see, we have to realize that. And the important thing then is if you realize that, then it's very easy to understand how you go about doing that. And according to Kituwa laws, one of the most important things a human being can have is compassion. That's what being grateful, that's what knowing where you who you are and where you come from comes to. It means that you have to appreciate that and love that and take care of it. And it means that you have to take care of the things that surround you and the people who exist with you. That's called compassion. So we should have we should embrace the idea that the first thing we have to do is to care and to show how much we care about things by doing things and conducting ourselves in that way. That's how we should do in our communities. That's what we should spread, first of all. Because we also say in the Cherokee way is that you can't have an answer for everything. No one can have an answer for everything. We're not the creator. We don't have an answer for everything. But what we can have, in lieu of an answer for everything, we can have at least hope. We can give hope in all things that we do. We can share that with each other in order to make tomorrow better. And in order for our children, in order for our grandchildren, we can make things. We can share hope. That's the first thing. Everything I've said all comes down to that. We should just exude. We should share and know that how important hope is, and share that with each other. That's what keeps us together. That's what keeps us alive, and that's what keeps us happy. That would be the Cherokee way of thinking.
And I would even go a little bit farther, something I've been thinking of for a long time in talking about uh, in these matrilineal societies, women are reflective of love and wellness. And some of the science I think that's come out in recent years, how your voice can even change the shape of water molecules, anger, hatred, anxiety can change things at the molecular level. And if those things can change things at the molecular level, I think love and compassion and kindness can also change things at the molecular level. And we are all connected through these energies, these subatomic particles, and I think, you know, the world is best moving through love and compassion at the subatomic level. And I can't, of course, prove it. I'm not a physicist, but, you know, Appalachian intellect, Bell Hooks always said that love was the thing that mattered. And I think that is indeed true by understanding a little bit more and a little bit more about indigenous science. I think would support that as well. And you have to have an open mind and open heart. Otherwise, what's it worth? You know, what's the value in that if it's not motivated by love and caring?
So Lisa and Tom, again, thank you for illuminating how important love and hope are and us coming together in good ways and working for balance and harmony. I have another question, again, related to relationships. And this is from Carolina Michelle. It says, thank you for the talk and for your work. It's heartwarming to see a successful collaboration between Indigenous and non-Indigenous knowledgeable people. Could each of you talk about challenges or keys to good collaborations and mutual understanding?
I would just say the first step is to try and dispel that we've accepted as differences and simply look towards the things we have in common as and that should apply to anybody, even intertribally among ourselves. We always look towards what we have in common, the people we know, the way we do stuff, the way we think about things. Even though we speak different languages, come from different tribes, that's the first thing we always talk about. This should be the way in which all people do stuff, is to look for that commonality, that common ground that says we are human beings and stuff. And I think that, as Lisa said when she started talking, I think that's what connected me, myself with Lisa's mother in that even though there's an age difference, certainly she was non-native, even though she had lived around Cherokee people here locally for her whole life. And I come from Oklahoma. I come from a Cherokee-speaking family, you know, so we come from 900 miles apart, from completely different places, different people and stuff. But yet I found that this was the first person I met here that I had something in common with. And that commonality was that we appreciated and cared very much about the ground that we walked on and what we saw here. These rivers, these creeks, these mountains meant something to us, both. And we shared all the thing, and we tried to share as much as we could with what short period of time that we would have to talk and stuff. We'd share stories and jokes about everything we knew, and we seemed to have that in common. Whether you were Cherokee or not, we had that in common. And it wasn't common. It's just that we didn't enjoy each other's different views. We enjoyed it because we knew what we were talking about. It was the same thing, kind of.
Yeah, humor is important, I think, and it is,
And appreciate.
an appreciation. There was a mutual respect. And sometimes, unfortunately, there are so many people who have preconceived ideas of who Indigenous people are and who Appalachian people are. And sometimes it's, they let these preconceived notions of who people are interfere with their ability to just be still and listen and open their minds and hearts to understanding how can we intersect at some of the most valuable things to us, and that's of course the land.
I want to make a quick just process check with Nancy. Time-wise, should we be closing or do we have a bit more time?
Let's create a bit more time, and if people have to leave, they can always come back and see the recording. But I think this is one of the most interesting and profound discussions we've ever had on this series, and the good part of it for me is it's things that, like David Begay and I and my kids and our all the people we love, this is at the forefront of what we think a good part of the day. These are the questions we grapple with, and these are the gosh, everything you said just rings so true to me. And that whole thing about having looking toward how can I say this? Looking through the ways we connect, the positive ways we connect. That's become kind of a password for like us dealing with everything that's going on and everybody else in the world. But what are the things that bring us together, whether it's different tribes, whether it's different people in a small community like up here in San Juan Island, or whether it's the bigger, larger community of Indigenous people that go to conferences, or just our own families, mothers, grandmothers. I've learned a lot, and I love the part about being of a place as opposed to being from a place, especially in this day and age when so many people move around so much. That's really profound, and I think it could change, if we think about it hard, it could change the way we even introduce ourselves, I think. So I would say, Polly, take some more time for questions, because the audience is coming up with wonderful questions, and I think this is a great venue for discussion.
We've got lots of good questions and we won't have time for them all, but I'm going to choose some that I think speak to some of the issues that we come back to again and again as Indigenous and non-Indigenous people seeking to live together in a good way. And there are a couple of questions that relate to education. One is from Abigail Smith saying, could you provide a list of recommended readings, videos, and resources related to these topics? And that may be a question also for you, Nancy, is people wanting to learn more, how can they learn more?
Thanks, Tom. There's a wonderful book that I'm reading now, and I don't want to butcher it. And so I'm going to try to think of what it is. I haven't finished it. And I want to make sure I get the title correct and the author correct. it's Nature and the Mind, the science of how nature improves cognitive, physical, and social well-being by Mark, MarcG Berman, Berman. I'm just now kind of going through some of that, and he brings the science to understand more about how the mind is impacted by nature, how we physiologically are impacted by nature, and how our well-being, both individually and socially, is improved. And he is a scientist. But these are the things that he's talking about are things that I have heard from Tom and other elders. These are things that they knew. We talk about, well, we go and, if we are having, a difficult time, we take a walk in the woods, right? And it makes you be able to concentrate and you feel better. You just instantly have a peace about you and a calmness where you can process. Well, he shows the science, the Western science behind that, but indigenous science has understood that those principles for thousands of years. And I think these types of books are important. I remember when my memory is getting worse and worse all the time. She worked at Harvard. She was a neuroscientist. She had a stroke. Something of Insight. You may have remembered that book. I don't remember. But she talks about she had a stroke and she worked in a science center. And so she had been very familiar with the science of strokes. And she could realize what her body was doing as she was having this stroke. But in her book, she talks particularly well about the science of being able to filter out the energy and molecules that are happening around us to discern what a tree is, to be able to know and discern what is around us, how it forms in itself. And that when she was writing about that, it made me think instantly of Aboriginal concepts of dreamtime and song lines, which are, amazing, concepts of science themselves. But she, as a, neuroscientist that was, working at Harvard, she was also explaining some of these things in a way that validated everything that these other indigenous people have known for thousands of years. My Stroke of Insight is the name of the book. But there are other books. I'm also reading a good edited volume on ecological traditional knowledge. Kyle White and others whom you may know, who are indigenous. Kyle is Potawatomi, I think, and he contributes to this volume in a wonderful chapter about some of the same kind of things that make us understand our interconnectedness, to all things, and writes so well about them. I think the title of the book is Traditional Ecological Knowledge, but and I can't think of the editors, so I apologize for. I used to have brain cells that clicked and actually worked, but right now that's not happening.
We at the end of this, we are going to ask you to answer some questions like a survey. You can send in your answers later. If you're interested in learning more about what Lisa is mentioning, the books and Tom's speaking, say that's something you'd like to pursue. If you'd like us to schedule another session like this, taking off from where we are now and going ahead, we could schedule that too. So let us know as audience participants that this is something you might like to have our speaker series pursue some more, because I think this is a wonderful discussion, and it's so topical, and it's so important today with everything that's going on, to have something to hold on to. So basically, that's a way you can write back to us, and we'll answer anything you send us to.
Thanks, Nancy.
And
Tom, did you have
like, Chris, is there a way they can, the best way is probably in answering the survey, right? We'll get to that at the very end.
Yeah, the survey would be a great place to put that, and I can send these chat transcripts to everybody, to Lisa and Tom too.
Great.
I'll try to take some ginkgo between now and then.
Tom, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Suggestions?
What was that?
Any kind of resources that people could access to learn more. It might be a book,
Oh,
video, or a program. Or...
well, see, there are, today, in fact, I was looking at a lot of, I was looking for a certain kind of book, and I realized how many books are out there. I can't specifically say, but I do know that there are lots of books out there now that are talking about things, and also there's some authors. There are some people who have written some books on recent things that are going on, like in Indonesia and those kinds of places. One of those students that we read, who was on Guam and wrote that book. I can't remember what that book was. I can't remember what the name of that book was. But he was from the island. He was writing about all the things that happen, and suffice to say that there are more and more books that are coming out, and it's not really that hard to look. All you have to do is look for them and stuff like that. But I would encourage that.
Yeah, the other book, traditional. Sorry, Tom. Okay.
Let me show you what I would suggest is this one. If you can, I don't know if you can see it. Chris, can maybe you put the sounds of Tohi in the chat?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I sure can. What would be, who's your publisher? Where should I direct the sales to?
so University of Alabama Press published.
Okay, I'll include that link.
It's not on Amazon, right?
Yeah,
Yep, meaning
it is.
it is?
Mhm.
Okay, so, or if you want to go right to the source, go right to the University of,
The traditional ecological knowledge book that I was referring to is edited by Melissa Nelson
oh, she's a good friend of ours. Yeah.
and Dan Schilling. So it's a wonderful book. Highly recommend it. And there are more and more, of course, braiding sweetgrass, which a lot of people know, and Robin Kimmerer has written other books, and there's a great set of books now that I think of it, and they're little bitty books that are in a box set, and Robin Kimmerer is one of the volume editors, but there are multiple writers, and there are 5 volumes, and it's all about kinship. It's about there's one on planets, there's one on just a variety of things, but it's in a little box set, and it's a very interesting read, and really makes us think about the interconnectivity of the universe and all things. And there's not all are indigenous contributions to that, but I know Robin Kimmer is one of the volume editors in that.
And she was one of our speakers early in our series. She's just wonderful.
And those talks are all available on our website if anyone wants to go back and see any of the previous presentations, almost all of them.
Yeah. And what about this little box set? How would people go about finding that?
Well, if Tom will talk to you, I'll look it up. I
Well,
just came by it by accident, so.
well, as I said, there's lots of things out there. She's just noted there are lots of new things that are out there, and there are lots of people that are working on stuff at this point, but it hasn't come out yet and stuff like that. The most important thing, though, is to know that this kind of way, this way of this realization that that these things matter, that these things actually count and are actually real, is actually being processed and being put into action now by people we didn't think. I mean, by some folks we didn't even have. It's a few years ago. We're on the verge of graduating some pretty illustrious young people from our tribes who are going to be writing books uh, before long, and they're coming out of this kind of and they're coming out of and they're kind of coming armed with this kind of aspect, if you will, in yours. Um, um, it's interesting to note that when I went, I started, I entered college at the University of Oklahoma in 1972, in the summer of 1971. And, and there were probably about 18 of us there at the very most that were identifiable Native Americans that hung together. There may have been more who were there on BIA scholarships and grants, but the Native American Student Association only comprised about 15 or 16 people. On a campus that put 30,000 students on campus every fall, there was just 19 of us there, 18 of us. In a state that has 36 recognized, uh, fairly recognized tribes. Once again, there were only 18 of us there on a flagship campus. And now the reason I'm saying that is not to, not to harp on that, but in this day and time, we have students even from the Eastern Band that are graduating from Yale, Dartmouth, Stanford, and those kind of places, along with Western Carolina University and a lot of other colleges. And they're out there in a very short order. These young people are coming from having heard about from being a part of that. Earlier, we were talking about how the students on campus right now, right at this moment, weren't even live when 9/11 happened. It was before their time. I mean, that's hard to believe. But the idea that there were only 18 Native students on the campus and I'm sure there were more, but 18 of us that were together on the campus of the University of Oklahoma in 1971 is something that just, they don't understand that anymore. And so a lot of new stuff is coming out of it. My whole point is that they're coming out of that realm of knowing this kind of thing, that we have to bet you that they're looking to reinforce what we are and to keep that. Um, uh, and and all the things that they're endeavoring to learn, whether they're going into law or medicine or anything else, they are grounded. They're grounded in the idea of who they are. And in the 1970s, we were grounded in who we are, but it didn't fit anything we were doing. You know, I mean, we were way out of our own pocket and then stuff like that. We were trying to make it ours, but it was very, very, very difficult. And these young people have kind of switched that around and stuff. So there's lots of new stuff that's going to happen, but that's what we get out of it. We get that positive kind of way that it should uh, be done, and it's evolving, and it's evolving because our younger people are more are understanding that they have to do that. Well, I just put it in a nutshell. They understand that they are of a place as opposed to from a place, you know. And so it gives them more to be grateful for, and it also gives them agency. And agency is something that we've been lacking for a long time. And that's
Can
the
you,
importance, and that gives us hope.
Thank you for that, Tom. We might close with this last question because it builds on what you just said, Tom, particularly maybe the young people who, haven't been taught or haven't learned that they are of a place. And this is from Jackie Hoover, who says, I grapple with helping young people bridge our traditions, belief systems, and values with modern Western lifestyles. Any advice?
That's the
What do you think?
That's the $1 million question too. Just while I'm thinking of it, all other reads, of course, Gregory Kahete, any and all of his work, and then a young Cherokee Nation guy by the name of Clint Carroll, who's now at University of Colorado teaching. Just to name a few. And the other books were called Kinship, Belonging in a World of Relations. And it's a 5-volume set. The quandary about that question, it's hard for me to answer. I don't have children, but I have worked in adolescent treatment centers for Native youth. I've worked in schools, doing work for health groups and things like that. I think as Tom was kind of talking about, that we have seen in the Cherokee community in recent years, young people now who are young and have young families who are in their 30s and 40s, there is a tremendous resurgence of adult language learners. And I think understanding the language is critically important in people finding themselves, understanding who they are. And because the language is, Tom has said before, again, language is medicine. It helps you physically and mentally. I think it grounds you. It also leads you to understand more about where that language is used. It's used with the land, it's used on the land, it's used on the water. It's used in various places where, as a first language speaker, you would use certain types of language that I, for example, as a non-native, non-speaker, would not. I think it also helps young people to get an idea of the value of understanding where they came from in terms of their names, right? All, the tribal names, most all of them in some form connects them back to the ground, connects them back to the land or or whatever natural geography that they have. They're people of those places. And I think it's the kids that I have seen or that we knew who were having tremendous amount of trouble were those who were totally disconnected from their identity as Indigenous people. But I've seen some of those very young people who eventually were able to do things like gain confidence and assurance of who they were by learning the language, by attending ceremony, by listening, spending time with elders, and by doing service in the community. Maybe they would be helpful, to an elder or a family that needed an extra hand. But being connected in that very physical way, not just metaphorically, but in a real physical way, being a part of that community. And it is hard because technology distracts you. We all spend time on our phones. When there was a time when we didn't have that, and we, of course, chose to spend time with other people. We were just connected because we did not have the interference of these other things that allow us a lot of access, to other things, to other information. But I think Tom might be more well suited in being able to discuss that, because it is an important question.
Yeah. And I won't belabor it or anything because it is that conversation can go on for a long time with many different aspects. But what has to occur is that the way in which and I don't know exactly how to explain this except to say that the language imbues us with that concept of how to look and how to think at things. And even if we're not learning from the language itself, I mean, even if we're not speaking the language, if we're talking to people that know about the language, or this is the importance of anything that has to do with language, and learning from those in our tribes who still speak the languages, or knowing the importance of it, it validates just by its existence and the way in which it's expressed and the way in which things talk. It validates us and it helps us understand the world. That's what the languages were intended to do. That's what native languages were intended to do. They were intended to interpret the world in a way that was understandable and scientific. And when you see that, when you begin to understand that, you can also translate it into and it can be translated. It's going to be other words, but it's going to mean the same thing. But the understanding of the importance of life and the importance of that science is what comes out of it. And that's what gives a person agency. And it creates a world in which the dysfunction that we've so long suffered among our own people with all kinds of different things, that kind of dysfunction can be deterred and can be dealt with if we bring back the understanding of how things work and adhere and adhere about how to solve those problems. But basically, one of the first in order to put that into perspective, I would say that it helps to create a world where we're no longer victims. We have for 200 years have been colonialized and also have been socialized to believe that everything that we do is because of things that happened before. So we blame these kinds of things. We blame it when we blame things that happened before we were born, we're taking the responsibility of that off of our shoulders and still keeping that alive and stuff, even though that really didn't happen to us. When we look at the people that it really did happen to and they survived and they made it possible for us to live, we don't get that part. We just take the part where everybody suffered. Wilma Mankiller years ago made a very interesting statement, and which I wholeheartedly agree with, and I'm glad she did. She said that in a statement she said, you cannot see the future through tear-filled eyes.
Wow.
And that is what I'm trying to say. There has to be an end to the victimhood, and there has to be a reaffirmation or a revitalization or a reconnection with the idea that that no, we have the means to make things better. We have the construct for it within our traditional societies and the way we look at it to make that work. We can do that. We know how to make those things work, and just as it worked in 1838, just as it worked in the late 1800s with tribes, it can work now. It's a proven fact that these things are human things. These are logical things. Remember, we're talking about science. We're talking about real stuff. This is how it works. This is how human beings work at their best. And we can still do that. We can re-implement the old way of thinking, which actually a new way of thinking, which is in fact, it's the old way of thinking. And in the end, we can say this, that it gives back hope and it gives back agency and it alleviates victimhood and it alleviates dysfunction. And it puts us on the right road, which we in Cherokee call Duyukta, or the correct road.
What he said.
I'm going to turn this back over to Nancy, but before I do, I want to say for myself, Mato Gali Eliga, thank you. I'm very grateful I feel I've been empowered by this presentation. I have things to share with the Cherokee community here around our language and things to share with our youth. So I appreciate this very much. And I know I'll be going back to the webinar recording and taking notes. So I'm encouraging those of you who didn't catch everything to remember this is a resource you can go back to again and again. And I'll turn it back to you, Nancy.
Thank you. Oh, thank you all for participating in these most wonderful discussions. It's so powerful, and I think almost everybody's going to walk away with that sense of hope that you're talking about, Tom, and a way to not include victimization. There's so many good things you both said and shared with us, and we can actually put them into our lives. I've been reading some of the webinar chats. There's a whole bunch of beautiful things in there, and if you can save it on your computer right now, you can go back to all the chats and look at them and what's been saying. We have recorded all of this presentation and all of the question and answers. They will be available on our IEI website, which is www.indigenouseducation.org/multimedia/. Okay. And there's no cost to download them. And we are honored that teachers from Harvard and Stanford and some indigenous colleges and just a wide range of professors are putting these these discussions into using them for their curriculum, and I'm sure that's what will happen as a result of the one today too. Even Robin Kimmerer uses some of these for her own courses she's teaching. So this is been a wonderful day today of discussions and participants and presenters. So in closing, I want to extend a very special thank you to our technical support, Chris Tarrant of Tarrant Solutions, Friday Harbor, Washington, and he's my son, I'm proud to say. Each time we host one of these speakers, there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes that you don't hear about and we don't hear about. And but it's always problem solving on the fly, and he always rises to the occasion. I have to tell you, from the Navajo side of things, the coyote factor is a disruptor and bringer of chaos, always lurking somewhere. And Chris is the one who always comes up with the plan B or C to counter the possible chaos. And that happened a lot today for some reason. In Cherokee, that disruptor is a rabbit, and that rabbit was working overtime, trying to make sure that nobody would get to be part of this series today. So Chris Wado, thank you so much for all that you do. And I also want to give a shout out to Ashley Tarrant, my daughter, who created our beautiful poster. We will be sending out an email to you just after this presentation with a very short survey asking your reaction to what you heard today. Please take time to answer the questions, because your responses will be really helpful to inform our future program design. So from all of us to all of you, thank you, Wado, ahehe, and gracias. And thank you in the language you're speaking from. And Tom and Lisa, much gratitude to you for spending time with us today. I can't tell you how grateful we are to you coming to us and sharing so much that will be of great, I think, assistance to us all as we go on into this future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.